took that matchup real serious because LaSalle was number 2 in the nation. You know, they weren't eligible for the tournament that year, but they had great, truly outstanding players on their team. And it was a big matchup, and the city of Philadelphia was just so hot, you know, and excited about what was going on, especially with that particular game, Villanova-LaSalle at that time.
Howard Porter was an absolute unit at Villanova. Standing at 6'8" and a solid 220 pounds, he played like someone close to 7 feet. His athleticism allowed him to snatch rebounds out of the air with authority and finish over defenders. His defensive instincts were on point, as he could guard on the perimeter and rise up with taller players to swat their shots at the rim. His offensive game was a work in progress, but he was still a solid prospect. After leading the Wildcats to the national title game in 1971, an unattended briefcase would be his greatest undoing, as it was discovered that he had signed an ABA contract while still in college. This resulted in him being stripped of his most outstanding player award, and his draft stock plummeted as he fell to the end of the second round. This situation seemed to affect him for the rest of his career, as Howard could never replicate his college success in the pros, mostly due to numerous injuries, a drug addiction, and his overall lack of improvement. After he got a blood clot in his lung and nearly died, he retired from the game and worked as a correctional officer. By 2007, Howard had been clean for a while and was getting his life back together, but on May 18th, he vanished. And the aftermath was one of the most tragic stories in NBA history. Welcome to PZ Hoops, and let's get down to it. Howard was born on August 31st, 1948 in Stuart, Florida. His mother gave him a book by Oscar Robertson on how to shoot, and he buried himself in this book. At Booker High School in Sarasota, he was one of the best players in the state, averaging 35 points as a senior, being named an All-American and leading his team to a Class A state championship. He could have gone anywhere for college, but George Raveling's words drew him to Villanova. Even after George left during the summer to join Lefty Driesell's coaching staff at Davidson, Howard's mind was set and he was a Wildcat. He averaged 30 points a game on the freshman team, as his performances drew the same crowd as the varsity games. He earned the nickname Geezer due to his advanced maturity at such a young age. Once he joined the varsity squad, he was supported by guys like Johnny Jones and Fran O'Hallen. They were 13-2, ranked 8th in the country heading into a highly anticipated matchup against LaSalle. Against the highly touted Kenny Durrett, Howard put up 21 points and 20 rebounds, along with an insane amount of blocks, but he shot just 5 for 19 from the floor in a 7-point loss. He was dominating the boards this season, grabbing 27 against Providence and 26 against St. John's. The Wildcats finished the season 21-4, ranked number 10 in the country. They would make the big dance, ironically, facing Davidson. Howard had a solid 23-10 on 50% shooting, but Mike Malloy was on fire, dropping 31-17 to seal the win. Howard's sophomore season ended early, but he was highly productive, averaging 22 points and 15 rebounds. The Wildcats added Chris Ford, and he was a big jolt to their offense, but they would get off to a slow start, sitting at 9-6 in February. They finally kicked it in gear, ending the season on an 8-game winning streak. They made the tournament again, and Howard dropped 18 points and 14 rebounds in an easy win over Temple. Villanova faced Calvin Murphy in Niagara, and Howard was unstoppable, dropping 29 points and 18 rebounds in a blowout win. Bob Lanier and St. Bonaventure would be too much for them in the regional final, and Howard had a modest 14 points and 9 rebounds. He led his team on a deep tournament run, so he was named to the All-Region team, and his name started to show up on draft boards. Villanova added Tom Inglesby in 1970, and now they were one of the best teams in the country. Howard was on another level, dropping 35 on Notre Dame, 35 on Penn, 40 on Seton Hall, and grabbing 30 rebounds against St. Peter's. The Wildcats were a complete team, so their 20-6 record was enough to get them into the tournament. Howard's name was now known nationally, as he was a second-team All-American, averaging 24 points and 15 rebounds on 53% shooting. This was a crazy time in the basketball world, as the ABA had established itself as a legit competitor to the NBA, and the two leagues were constantly fighting to secure the top college prospects. Reps from the Pittsburgh Condors had approached Howard about signing a futures contract. As he would later say, "I think it's harder now for agents to get to players, but I don't know. Back then, they could come right up to you. There weren't any rules. Those guys, they pissed me off. I went out with a lot of them. They took me to fancy restaurants, bought the meals. They gave me some fringe money. They had me sign documents." That's what they always called them, documents. They said they weren't contracts, weren't binding, just sign. Howard received $15,000 for signing the contract with Pittsburgh, and it was clear that he had come into some money, as he bought some new clothes and a new car. Despite his illegal dealings, he was locked in for the tournament, dropping 26 points and 18 rebounds in the first round win over St. Joe's. He put up 25-8 against Fordham, and 35-15 in a 43-point blowout of Penn. They met Jim McDaniels in Western Kentucky in the Final Four, and he and Howard would have a lot more in common than they thought. But Villanova pulled out the close win in overtime as Howard dropped 22-16. The Wildcats surprised everyone, making a Cinderella run to the national championship game against who else but UCLA. But this is where the magic ended, as the Bruins won by 6, earning their 5th national title in a row. Even though Howard was on a losing team, he won the tournament's most outstanding player, and he was at the top of the college world. But strangely, he never received a trophy and there was no presentation, which indirectly let him know that the NCAA already had knowledge of what he had done. Within days of the championship game, the NCAA vacated Howard's achievement, also forcing Villanova to forfeit all their tournament games and give back the money they earned for participating. Howard went from a can't-miss prospect to someone that the NBA advised teams not to draft, but Bulls GM Pat Williams felt his potential was too good to ignore, so he took Howard with the 15th pick of the second round. But this started a messy legal battle, since the Condors filed a lawsuit against him, stating that Howard had already signed a contract with them. This ordeal was solved through a trade involving Paul Ruffner and an agreement to play some exhibition games in the future. After Howard signed a 5-year, $1.5 million contract with the Bulls, he reported to training camp. But things were not as they seemed, as Coach Dick Motter went to Pat and said, "Howard Porter can't play. He can't pass the ball from here to the wall. He can't dribble. He can't play." Although his words were harsh, Motter wasn't all the way wrong in his assessment, as Howard really hadn't developed any dribbling skills since he didn't have to in college. He had become so reliant on his physical tools that his lack of offense would be easily exposed in the pros. It also didn't help that Howard was dealing with a chronic ankle injury. He would start his NBA career glued to the bench, but he did drop 21 points and 8 rebounds in 18 minutes against Philly. He didn't really see any major action until around March, when the Bullets had a playoff spot locked in. He didn't have an 8-game stretch averaging 12 points and 8 rebounds, but in totality, this was a very underwhelming season for him. Chicago was the best defensive team in the league, and fellow rookie Clifford Ray showed a lot of promise on the boards, as the Bulls finished 57-25. Howard averaged 6 points and 3 rebounds as the Bulls faced the Lakers in the semifinals. He had a limited role in this series, as the Lakers easily swept them. With Tom Boerwinkle injured most of the year, Clifford was the new starting center in 1972. The Bulls also added Gar Hurd and Dennis Autry, so it seemed like Howard was getting pushed deeper into the rotation. His ankle problems would pop up again, as he missed nearly half the season. He dropped the season-high 18 points and 6 rebounds on 8 of 11 shooting against the Pacers, but this was another lost year for him. The Bulls were great though, finishing 51-31, as he averaged 5 points and 3 rebounds. Chicago faced the Lakers again, and Howard had a nice game 1, with 14 points and 8 rebounds on 60% shooting. He went and cracked double digits again this series, as the Lakers won in 7. Howard was finally healthy in 1973, and he was now the backup small forward behind Chet. He was actually seeing real minutes, and he was a solid contributor, dropping 20 points and 8 rebounds against Houston, 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks against Phoenix, and 21 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks in the season finale against Cleveland. The Bulls still kept their defensive identity, and they finished with 51 wins, as Howard averaged 9 points and 4 rebounds. They faced Detroit in the semifinals, and he was decent in game 1, with 12 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists, but he would have a modest role the rest of the way. The Bulls won in 7 games, facing the Bucks in the conference finals. Howard dropped 10 points and 8 rebounds in game 2, but the Bulls didn't have a big man that could match up with Kareem, as he averaged 35 points and 20 rebounds, shooting 66% in a convincing sweep. Howard still hadn't taken the leap that the Bulls were expecting in 3 seasons, so they traded him to the Knicks, somehow getting a first-round pick in return. New York had lost Willis Reed, Dave DeBusschere, and Jerry Lucas to retirement, so they needed anyone they can get, but Howard was stuck on the bench again, although he did grab 15 rebounds in a game against Philly. The Knicks needed draft capital, so Howard was sent to the Pistons for a first-round pick. Detroit needed help at the small forward, and he would get the largest role of his career. He got the opportunity to start some games down the stretch, and he was producing pretty well. But the Pistons seemed to be just Bob Lanier, Dave Bing, and everyone else. However, their 40-42 record was enough for the playoffs. Howard averaged 8 points and 4 rebounds as they faced the Sonics in the first round. He had a sizable role in the playoff series for the first time, and he dropped 21 points and 8 rebounds in game 1, but Detroit would lose. He had 15-7 in the game 2 win, and while he had 16-5 on 55% shooting in game 3, the Pistons lost this game and the series. Detroit traded for Archie Clark and Kevin Porter to bolster their backcourt, while Howard was back to being a reserve, this time backing up Allen Eberhard. He put up some solid outings, including 23-11 against the Lakers, 28 points against the Warriors, and 6 points, 11 rebounds, and a career-high 7 assists against Milwaukee. Bob really didn't have a lot of help this year, even with an all-star season from Curtis Rowe. They only won 36 games, but because the Midwest Division was trash, they still made the playoffs. Howard averaged 9 points and 3 rebounds, and the Pistons faced Milwaukee in the first round. He was solid in this series, and the Pistons took it in Game 3, winning their first playoff series since 1962. They faced the Warriors in the semifinals, and Howard turned up in Game 3, dropping 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks on 7 of 11 shooting. He had 27 points and 8 rebounds in Game 6, but Detroit lost by 2 in overtime. The Pistons selected Marvin Barnes in the ABA dispersal draft, and he was expected to form a solid front court duo with Bob, but his legal troubles cleared the way for Howard to get his first full-time starting job. He dropped 26 points and 12 rebounds against the Pacers, 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 blocks on 11 of 15 shooting against Portland, and 25 points and a career-high 17 rebounds against the Nets. In a season filled with off-the-court issues, nobody else besides Bob averaged more than 13 points. They somehow managed to win 44 games, as Howard's career season saw him average 13 points and 6 rebounds. They faced the Warriors yet again in the first round, and he would have the best playoff series of his career. He shot 70% in the first 2 games, which they split. In the series deciding Game 3, he dropped a career-high 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks. But this performance was overshadowed by a fight between Eric Money and Chris Dudley that cleared both of the benches. This great performance was spoiled as the Warriors won by 8 to take the series. Howard was traded pretty early into the 1977 season, being sent to the Nets along with Kevin Porter. New Jersey had nothing to play for, so Howard had a nice role on this team. He dropped 29 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 steals against the Pacers, 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 blocks against Houston, and 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals against Kansas City. Bernard King and Super John were both elite scorers, while George Johnson led the league in blocks. But New Jersey was a cellar dweller, finishing 24 and 58. Howard averaged 13 points and 4 rebounds. He was dealing with another injury in the summer, but the clot that had formed had dislodged and traveled up to his lung, nearly killing him. Howard chose to retire right then and there, feeling concerned about his health, but he would find it hard to adjust to life after basketball, starting a few unsuccessful business ventures and eventually divorcing from his wife. He would eventually turn to cocaine to help deal with the stress, as he had already done it socially while he was in the league, but he would hit rock bottom in 1985, being arrested for a probation violation related to a previous conviction on drug possession, and he was sentenced to 6 months in jail. When he was released, he was sleeping on his mother's couch. He then met and befriended Ken Lowe, who owned the construction firm that he was working for. After Howard told him his story, Ken was determined to help him, so he called around and found the information for the Maurice Stokes Fund, and Howard was able to get the help he needed. After he left the facility, he accepted a job as a probation officer in Ramsey County, Minnesota. In 2006, he would also reconnect with Villanova, becoming close to star guard Randy Foye. In 2007, though, it seemed like Howard had fallen back into his addiction, as he was cruising the street for sex workers. And on May 18th, he picked up Tanya Yvette Johnson, and he went back to her apartment for the exchange, as he offered her cocaine and cash. Not that much later, a man named Rashad Arthur Riley broke down the door and aimed his gun at Howard's head, demanding money and drugs. When Howard didn't oblige his request, he was beaten to death and dumped in an alleyway. On May 26th, Howard's body was found, as there was significant evidence of blunt force trauma. Rashad was sentenced to life in prison, while Tanya didn't receive any charges, although she was recorded making calls to several inmates about the incident in the days after Howard went missing. The way Howard Porter played at Villanova, he was already looking like a future all-star. He was a supreme athlete with the skills to bang down low with the bigs and to hang with guards on the perimeter. He could rebound and he could also block shots. He was having the best season of his college career, but in the midst of all this, he signed a contract with the ABA. The NCAA caught wind of this, and they eventually removed all of Villanova's tournament wins. But the worst part was that they stripped Howard of his most outstanding player award, something that bugged him for his entire career. Once he got to the league, his skill set didn't translate and he never lived up to the college hype, partly due to his injury history and his cocaine use. He went down a dark route, even serving prison time, but he eventually got a job at a jail as a prison officer. Unfortunately, he was set up by 2 lowlifes who felt that he was an easy robbery victim. Although his life was senselessly taken, Howard Porter remains a Big 5 hero, and his life story was the embodiment of resilience and determination. Man, thank you guys. I really appreciate y'all. It's a really sad story, for being honest, because you got this young kid, he's just dominating in college, and here comes these money-hungry agents trying to take advantage of him. Everyone's giving you these offers from all these different leagues, because you got 2 major leagues now. So you got offers coming in from the ABA, you got offers coming in from the NBA, and most of these kids are poor. They've never had to deal with any type of major negotiation. And if you throw a bunch of money in front of them, they're going to take it. Like, duh, if you're living off syrup sandwiches and bread, like, if you offer me $30,000 to play over here, I'm going to take it. His whole career kind of went down because he worked so hard to get to the point where he earned that most outstanding player award, and then he just took it away from him. And then once you get to the league, then you find out that your skill set is not where it's supposed to be. So you're already having a hard time adjusting. And then once you finally get to the point where you're getting consistent time and you're turned into a solid player, then you get a blood clot and you almost die from a blood clot. So, I mean, I can understand why he retired, because it's like, that's a serious thing. But then he falls into addiction, which is a lot of stories in the 70s and 80s. He falls into addiction. He ends up serving some prison time. He gets clean. He gets a job as a correctional officer, serving the community. But then, you know, he falls back into it, and two lowlifes set him up. I'm still confused on how the woman didn't get any charges. She basically set him up. Like, she took him back to her apartment. She initially said that 4 masked men came in and beat her up and then beat Howard up. But my thing is, if it was 4 masked men, why is only 1 guy arrested for his murder? Wouldn't she be an accessory or some type of co-conspirator if she made the call and set him up, or if she's making calls to people after he's dead and in an alley somewhere and he's been missing for a week and she's making calls about what happened to people in jail? I don't get it, man. Sickening. Really sickening. R.I.P. to Howard, man. You should not have died that way. That's freaking sick. But dude was a beast in college, man. He was a beast in college. It just, oh man, it just sucks. It really sucks, because he was getting his life together. They probably found out he was a former NBA player, so they probably assumed he had a whole bunch of money, but he was just a regular guy, living a regular life, doing what everybody else was doing. But again, R.I.P. Howard Porter, man. One of the best players in Villanova history, for being honest. One of the best players in the Big Five, really. Thank you guys. Really appreciate y'all for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Turn on post notifications if you haven't already. Thank you. Please be safe. I'm out. Peace.